Kerrigan Beaver is an incredible woman raising a single parent raising her son. I really admire and respect you for that. I know how difficult it is. I'm raising my own 3.5-year-old grandson, and it's like I've seen you and the way you brought your child to all the events. I think that she's an incredible young man that you're raising. And she sits on our board of directors of CAN. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to call up ladies first. Kerrigan, if you can come up. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I really don't like mics. Yeah, I don't like mics. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here today. I also want to acknowledge the traditional people that were on the Algonquin that were on today as well. I get so nervous every time I do this, and I've been doing it for I think 12 years or so now. I never know what I'm going to say. So today I thought I'd try and write something out, and I probably shouldn't have because I didn't memorize it. So like I said, I always get nervous. So yeah, my name's Kerrigan, and I currently reside in Toronto. I don't consider myself a single mom because I have a lot of community helping me raise my son, and they're my family. So I do just sleep alone with him. That's about it. You contracted HIV and Hep C. My God. Contracted, what does that even mean? My mind just became a blur. 3 big words in one sentence that I knew nothing about. Contracted, HIV, and Hep C. Everything seemed too unreal for me to deal with at the time. I was only 25 years old. Back then, though, I thought I had my whole life in front of me. But I also didn't have the education that I have now. I thought, this is it. I'm going to die in a few years, and that'll be that. So many things went through my mind over the next few weeks, but it didn't really set in for another 4 or 5 months after when I started to feel sick. I got pretty tired. I lost most of my appetite, which I didn't really have an appetite back then because I was really using hardcore drugs. But I went down to a shocking 90 pounds. And I remember people telling me that the inside of my eyes looked yellow, which was certainly a sign of jaundice. And yet, at the same time, I was too much into the drinking and using drugs to not care about my health. But at the same time, I started getting scared and wanted to do something about it, but I just didn't know how. Of course, I couldn't let anyone know my fears. I was afraid of that I may not live long enough to see my young daughters at the time to grow up to be adults and do adult things. I was afraid to go to sleep. I was afraid to eat. I was afraid to do anything, but more so, I was afraid to die. I was only 25 years old, and I had contracted 2 death sentences, or so I thought, and that was almost 12 years ago. Treatment. Over the next couple months after I started to feel and get sick was the worst time I ever had to face. I knew I needed to get help, and I knew I needed to get medical attention, but I also needed to stop using and drinking long enough to do so. And back then, I couldn't get the help that I needed to stop unless I did it on my own. Why? Because most of all the agencies had an abstinence-based policy, except for maybe 2 or 3, Sherburne Health, 2 Spirits, and maybe one of the other shelters. If I was under the influence of alcohol or if I was high on any kind of substance, I couldn't use their services. How in the world was I going to do this? I started thinking of my 2 young girls at the time, and even though I wasn't 100% perfect, I was able to stop enough just to start treatment. I went on interferon and I can never say these names. Like, why can't you just have a simple name? I went on interferon rivaroxaban. Oh my God, once a week seemed like an eternity, but it was only like 11 months. I'd get a shot, and I remember the pain of the injection site, and I took a lot of pills. I got pretty sick. I had the wickedest headaches, the most pleasant diarrhea, and the best nausea ever, and with an extremely upset stomach, which cost me more of my appetite. And in return, if I ate anything, I'd have vomiting. I also remember having a lot of back pain. I couldn't lay down and get comfy and enjoy watching TV because I couldn't get comfy. Support? Nope. I went through all this with no support. I didn't know where to go for support. All the support places that I knew had turned me away because of my addiction. I had no one but me, and it felt pretty crappy to not have anyone to turn to. So by the time the 3rd month came around, I fell into a deep depression so bad that I just wanted to die, and I could see myself doing things to myself, like jumping off a bridge when I was walking over it, or jumping in front of traffic while standing at the sidewalk and getting hit by traffic. I remember smiling at these thoughts, and it was like almost something took over me. And it was a very scary time for me because even though I didn't want to live anymore, I couldn't imagine myself dying. I was put on antidepressants, and they kind of worked, but I managed to get through the next 3 months. And then my thoughts turned into, how did I get myself here in the first place? Oh yeah, I used shared needles. How did I become to hate myself so much that I really didn't care about what happened to me until I was told I had hep C? To think, though, this was all preventable. I didn't have to do the things that I did, but I did, and now it was time to own it and try to live by example and make the best of the situation. It was a serious time of reflection for me and of where I've been, where I was, and what I wanted to do in life. It was a time when I really needed to find myself and find my own again. I came from an alcoholic biological family. I came from an emotionally abusive adopted mother. I was a crackhead sex trade worker who was an emotional wreck from losing my 2 young girls after I was charged with attempted murder, and which got downgraded to disregard for human life on one of them. And on top of it, I had an arson charge on top of it all, which of course I did none of it. But it didn't matter though. At the end of all this, this is how I ended up where I was at the time. I lost everything. I wanted to be the best mother that I could be for them, even though I no longer had them in my care. I wanted to do more for me too. I had dreams. I had to keep myself busy, so I tried to focus on staying healthy. It's funny how at one point in my life, when all I did was think of my girls, I get so wound up that that's the reason why I went to go use and drink. But for that moment in life, that's what made me keep strong to finish treatment. Thinking of my girls and what I wanted for them in life got me through the next 3 months. The last 2 months of treatment seemed like the longest, but I knew what to expect every day, and especially on treatment days. I knew I'd vomit, so I put the garbage by the bed. I knew I wouldn't be able to eat so I'd make myself soup and crackers before. It was those small things that became so routine for me that I wasn't sure what I'd do with myself after I finished treatment. And at the same time, those last few months was when I was itching to get back to living. But what did living look like for me? I was alone. I had no family. I had very few supports back then. And once I completed treatment, life got extremely chaotic again for me. I fell back using into hardcore drugs with crack, cocaine, and alcohol, and anything else I could get my hands on. But I was hep C free though. I had just spent close to a year feeling feelings I never knew I had, and it brought up a lot of crap for me to deal with, and the only way that I knew how to deal with it was by numbing myself, so that's what I did. My harm reduction though, I never shared a needle or used a shared needle again. Since completing treatment, I have cleaned myself up, which took another 3 years to do. And for the past 5 years now, I work in the community in different capacities to break down the stigma and discrimination related to HIV and hep C. I am the Aboriginal Program Coordinator for PSAN, which is Prisoners HIV Support Action Network in Toronto. I was the Women's Program Coordinator last year. And today, I'm living my dreams. I'm creating new ones not only for me, but also for my son. What I wish happened for me back then was to have the supports that I didn't get, like counseling, peer supports, groups. I needed the harm reduction-based places that most places are today, instead of the only few that were in Toronto at the time. I needed a support group, and I needed to know that I wasn't alone. Treatment was one of the things in my path that saved my life today and made me really try harder, and because of it, even though it took years after, I did it, and now I know that having HIV and Hep C is not the end of the world anymore. I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that there are options out there, and I can now educate others and provide that peer support for others today going through what I went through. Why? Simply because I contracted HIV and Hep C. Thank you.